Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered what makes her so unforgettable, so magnetic, without even trying? She walks into a room and people turn their heads, not because of what she's wearing or how loud she is, but because there's something unshakably powerful in the way she carries herself. A quiet confidence, a depth, a presence. She's not chasing approval, she's not performing, she's simply being. And it's irresistible. But here's the secret most people never talk about. This kind of allure doesn't come from youth, perfection, or playing games. It comes from habits, deep, emotional, soul-driven habits that only mature women master. Habits that are born from heartbreak, healing, boundaries, and years of learning to choose yourself. What if I told you that you already have the power to be that woman? That there are 6 habits, simple, profound, life-altering, that once you embody them, will make you not only impossible to forget, but unforgettable to yourself. Stay with me. What you're about to hear may just change how you see yourself forever. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly felt the pressure to shrink yourself just to make everyone else feel comfortable? Have you ever explained your kindness, defended your strength, or softened your brilliance just to avoid being too much? So many women have been taught, without ever being told, that their worth is something they must constantly prove, that their value is earned, never simply inherent. There's a woman, maybe she's you, who used to anxiously reread text messages before sending them, overthinking every word. She replayed conversations in her mind, wondering if she said too much, came off too strong, asked for too little. She gave and gave, not because she was weak, but because she thought maybe, just maybe, if she gave enough, someone would finally choose her, understand her, stay with her. But here's the truth she hadn't yet discovered. Irresistibility does not live in effort. It lives in embodiment. A mature woman becomes magnetic not when she chases value, but when she becomes it, quietly, calmly, unapologetically. This shift begins when she understands something deeply psychological yet simple. Worth is internal, not external. In developmental psychology, we talk about internal locus of control, the sense that one's identity and value are determined from within, not dictated by others. A woman who has grown into emotional maturity no longer needs her surroundings to validate her existence. She no longer adapts herself to be accepted. She is, and in her being, she becomes radiant. Now think of the woman who no longer feels the need to prove anything. She walks into the room with a stillness, a self-trust that doesn't ask for permission to exist. She doesn't need loudness to be seen. She doesn't need agreement to feel right. She doesn't compromise her voice just to be liked. She doesn't overextend her care to be worthy of love. She doesn't chase affection. This kind of woman doesn't perform, she doesn't play the games, and that's what makes her so incredibly captivating, because we live in a world where women are conditioned to be pleasing first, present second. When a woman unlearns that and begins to embody her truth rather than sell it, everything about her changes. Her posture changes. Her silence carries weight. Her yes has intention, and her no becomes sacred. And here's the paradox that will liberate you. The moment you stop trying to become enough is the moment you finally feel it. You were never too emotional. You were intuitive. You were never too much. You were expansive. You were never too quiet. You were wise enough to observe. You were never the problem. You were simply asking to be met where others refused to rise. So ask yourself this. What would happen if you stopped proving and simply embodied your worth? What if, instead of fighting for space, you became the space others longed to enter? That shift from confusion to clarity, from insecurity to presence, is where the journey of irresistibly begins. Not because you begged for it, but because you remembered you were always it. And the moment you realize that, You stop chasing what's already yours. You become the woman who no longer asks for value. You simply are it. And that right there is your power. Have you ever been told you're too guarded when all you were doing was protecting a heart that's been bruised one too many times? Have you ever been made to feel guilty for having boundaries, as if saying no made you difficult, cold, or unloving? There's a woman who used to say yes, even when her soul whispered no. She stayed quiet when something felt off. She kept the peace while her own inner world felt like it was at war. And deep down she believed that if she just gave more of herself, more time, more energy, more forgiveness, she would finally feel safe, seen, and chosen. But let's tell the truth. Self-abandonment never leads to belonging. One of the most magnetic, mature habits a woman can embody is this. She protects her emotional energy like it is sacred, because it is. And yet, many women feel guilty for doing just that. Why? Because we live in a culture that teaches women to prioritize harmony over honesty, to be accommodating over assertive, to be agreeable over authentic. But emotional boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks, with choices, with standards. They are a reflection of self-respect, not rejection. When a woman learns to protect her energy, not with aggression, but with grace, she stops leaking her light in places that were never built to hold her. From a psychological standpoint, this is what we call emotional regulation and self-differentiation. It means you are no longer reactive. You no longer make decisions based on guilt or fear of rejection. You respond rather than absorb. You decide what gets to influence your peace. And here's what's truly transformative. People who are emotionally available, emotionally healthy, are drawn to women who respect their own energy. Because it signals wholeness. It signals that you are not performing for approval. You're protecting what you've worked so hard to heal. Think of the woman who no longer feels the need to explain why she won't entertain chaotic communication, why she steps away from people who leave her feeling small, confused, or drained. She doesn't create drama, but she doesn't tolerate it either. That woman becomes irresistible because in a world that often expects women to be everything for everyone, the woman who says, I matter too, becomes a force. And this isn't selfish. This is sacred. In trauma healing, we understand that people-pleasing is not kindness. It's survival. It's the little girl inside you who learned that love must be earned, that your needs come last, that keeping others happy was the only way to avoid abandonment. But now you're not that little girl anymore. You're a woman, a powerful, radiant, intuitive woman who is allowed to say, this is my limit, this is my boundary. This is what I need in order to feel safe, in love. Because love without safety isn't love, it's performance. And love without boundaries isn't intimacy, it's enmeshment. So what if you stopped apologizing for being selective with your time and energy? What if you honored your emotional world like the masterpiece it is? What if, instead of fearing that you're too much for having needs, you realize that the right people will see those needs as sacred invitations, not burdens? That's when everything changes. Because when a woman protects her energy, she protects her power. And in doing so, she doesn't just become more irresistible to others, she becomes magnetic to herself. She returns home to her own heart. And there finally she realizes, I was never too much. I was just always meant to be whole. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, why do I always feel like I have to earn love, even when I'm already giving everything I have? Have you ever stayed in a relationship longer than you should have, simply because you hoped that one day they'd finally see your worth? There's a certain kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up as tears. It shows up as silence, as smiling when you're hurting, as being the strong one while you're slowly fading inside. And the heartbreaking part, many women carry that kind of weight every single day. believing that their value depends on being needed, being perfect, being everything to everyone. But here's the truth: most women were never told, you don't have to perform to be loved. In fact, one of the most irresistible habits of a mature woman is that she lives from a place of wholeness, not desperation. She no longer chases approval because she knows she is already enough. She doesn't shapeshift to please. She doesn't overextend to feel worthy. She offers love, yes, but never at the cost of betraying herself. This is where the shift begins. Because what you've been told about love and what it actually is are often two very different things. From a psychological perspective, this struggle is rooted in something called attachment trauma. It's when early emotional experiences, often with caregivers, taught you that love must be earned, that it comes with conditions, that your needs, your voice, your feelings are only valid when they fit someone else's comfort. So you became the pleaser, the giver, the peacemaker. You smiled through pain, hoping your patience would eventually pay off. But real love doesn't need you to shrink. Real connection isn't built on sacrifice. It's built on truth. And the truth is, when a woman begins to prioritize her own emotional authenticity, when she stops outsourcing her worth and starts honoring her inner knowing, she becomes unshakable. Imagine this. You're in a room full of people, and instead of wondering if they like you, you ask yourself, do I feel safe here, seen here, supported here? That shift in question changes everything, because now your power isn't in how others perceive you, it's in how deeply you are aligned with yourself. The mature woman no longer fears being alone. Why? Because she knows she is not empty. She is full. She is not waiting for someone to complete her. She is already whole. That kind of energy is not just attractive, it's magnetic. It's what draws emotionally available, present, and conscious love towards you. Because people feel it. They feel when you're not operating from fear. They feel when your yes means yes and your no means no. They feel when you're not trying to be chosen, you've already chosen yourself. This isn't arrogance. This is healing. It's the beautiful psychological process of individuation. The moment you realize that your needs, desires, and voice matter just as much as anyone else's. It's not about being hardened or distant. It's about being rooted, anchored, emotionally self-sufficient. So the next time you feel the urge to prove your worth, pause, breathe, and remember, you don't have to perform, you don't have to fix, you don't have to convince anyone to love you. Because the most irresistible thing you could ever be is at peace with yourself. And from that peace, from that deep well of self-respect, love doesn't just find you, it recognizes you. It meets you where you are. And it mirrors back the truth you've always known deep down, that you were never the problem. You were just waiting to come home to yourself. Have you ever sat across from someone, trying so hard to be understood, only to feel like your words were floating in the air, unseen, unheard, dismissed, like they didn't matter? Have you ever asked yourself, why do I always have to explain how I feel? Why don't they just feel it with me? So many women carry the quiet ache of emotional loneliness, even while lying next to someone they love. It's the kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being with someone who doesn't truly see you. And it makes you question your reality. You start to wonder if maybe you're asking for too much, if maybe being deeply seen is some kind of fantasy. But it's not. What you're asking for is not too much. It's emotional attunement. And this is one of the most powerful habits that makes a mature woman not just irresistible, but deeply radiant. Emotional attunement is when someone senses you without you needing to scream for it. It's when your silence is heard, not overlooked. It's when your shifting energy is noticed, not ignored. And here's the truth. When a woman develops the habit of emotionally attuning to herself, she stops begging others to do it for her. Because the emotional abandonment she once tolerated, it no longer feels like love. It feels like loss. Psychologically, many women are conditioned early on to be the caretakers of emotions, everyone else's emotions. You're taught to soothe, to understand, to adapt. And in the process, you may have learned to downplay your own inner world. You learn to rationalize emotional neglect as he's just not good at talking, or he shows love in his own way. But slowly, that quiet dismissal chips away at your inner truth, until one day you start realizing you don't want to feel invisible in your own relationship anymore. This is the moment of awakening, when a mature woman says, I will no longer be the only one trying to bridge the emotional gap. Something inside her shifts. She begins listening to herself the way she once wished others would. She becomes fluent in her own emotional language. And with that, she starts attracting people who speak that language too. That's the deeper secret here. When you attune to your own heart, your energy changes. You stop sending out signals of desperation. You stop over-explaining. You stop trying to convince anyone that you're worth feeling deeply for, because you already know it. And suddenly, the people who only want the surface of you, the version that's always accommodating, always cheerful, always low maintenance, those people start to fade. Not because you push them away, but because your emotional depth is no longer available to those who only want convenience. It's not your job to teach someone how to care, but it is your job to model how you care for yourself. When a woman becomes emotionally attuned to herself, she becomes magnetic. Not because she's perfect, not because she hides her needs, but because she honors them with grace. She listens inwardly. She doesn't betray her own intuition just to keep the peace. So the next time you feel unseen, unheld, unmet, pause, turn inward. Ask yourself, am I abandoning myself just to be accepted? Because the most powerful love you will ever receive is the one that meets you exactly where you are, not the version you pretend to be, not the one that shrinks to fit, but the real, raw, beautiful you. And from that place, you stop searching for emotional safety in others, because you finally built it within. That's the shift, from confusion to clarity, from heartache to heart power. And once you feel it, once you live it, you never go back. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt like you had to dim your light, turn down your opinions, soften your presence, shrink just a little so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable? And did you do it so often that it started to feel like second nature, like the cost of being accepted was being less of yourself? So many women live this truth in silence. Not because they lack strength, but because they've been taught that their strength makes others uneasy, that confidence is arrogance, that being direct is being difficult, that setting boundaries is being too much. But here's the deeper truth. The fifth habit that makes a mature woman absolutely irresistible is her unapologetic self-expression. Not loudness, not dominance, but truth. A woman who speaks from her core, not for attention, but from alignment. Let's go deeper. Psychologically, many women are trained from a young age to be agreeable, to keep the peace, to not rock the boat. This good girl conditioning becomes a script. Smile, nod, don't interrupt, make sure everyone is comfortable. And over time, this script turns into silence. You hesitate before sharing your real thoughts. You rehearse conversations in your head to make them sound softer. You say yes when every fiber in your body is screaming no. This habit of self-abandonment doesn't happen all at once. It happens in